The first time I saw her, I wanted nothing more than to avoid her. The way she looked at me, with that cool, piercing gaze, made it clear we were destined to be adversaries. She wasn't just a stranger. She was the kind of person who unsettled me without saying a word. Her name was Emily. Our worlds collided on the first day of senior year, in the sprawling hallways of Lincoln High. She moved through the crowd like she belonged to some secret world I could never understand. I, on the other hand, was the girl who had learned to blend into the background, to keep her head down and avoid trouble. But trouble had a way of finding me that year, and it came wrapped in Emily's quiet mystery. Emily had a reputation. Some said she was cold and calculating. Others whispered about the way she seemed to carry a heavy burden behind her calm exterior. I didn't care about rumors. All I knew was that every time she crossed my path, a knot tightened in my stomach. My own life wasn't perfect. My parents had split the summer before, and the tension at home was thick enough to suffocate. School was my escape, but even there, I felt like an outsider. So, when Emily started showing up, quietly observing, never quite fitting in, yet impossible to ignore, I felt a mix of curiosity and resentment. Our first encounter was in the library. I was buried in a book trying to forget the chaos waiting for me at home, when she sat down across from me without a word. For a moment, we simply stared at each other, a silent challenge hanging between us. She broke the silence first. "You don't have to pretend," she said softly. I frowned. "Pretend what?" "Like everything's fine. Like you're okay with all this," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the rows of books and the hum of students outside. Her words caught me off guard. No one ever saw beneath the surface. Not really. I wanted to dismiss her, to tell her she was wrong, but something in her eyes made me hesitate. There was pain there, too. From that day on, Emily and I shared a silent understanding, though neither of us would admit it. We were both carrying invisible scars, locked behind walls no one dared to breach. Still, I kept my distance. She was an enigma, a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. As the weeks passed, our paths crossed more often. Sometimes we worked on group projects reluctantly together. Sometimes we exchanged brief, sharp words. The tension was undeniable. Yet beneath the surface, something was shifting. I caught glimpses of a kindness in Emily that no one else seemed to see, a softness that clashed with her icy exterior. At home, the tension only worsened. My mother's silence was louder than words, and my father's absence was a wound that wouldn't heal. School was the only place where I could breathe, but with Emily around, the air felt heavier, charged with unspoken secrets and the promise of change. One afternoon, as autumn leaves drifted past the classroom window, Emily surprised me by inviting me to sit with her during lunch. I hesitated, my walls ready to shut her out, but something inside me, a flicker of curiosity or maybe loneliness, made me accept. She didn't speak much, but her presence was a comfort I didn't expect. It was the first crack in the armor we both wore. That day, I started to realize that the story I had told myself about Emily, about her being my enemy, might not be the whole truth. There was more beneath the surface, hidden and waiting. What her secret was, I had no idea, but I felt it in the way she looked away when the conversation drifted too close to her past. And as the days passed, I knew one thing for certain. My life was about to change. The day everything changed started like any other. The school buzzed with the usual chatter, lockers slamming, and footsteps echoing through the halls. But beneath the noise, I felt an undercurrent of tension, something about Emily that seemed different, more vulnerable, more real. We had been sitting in the library together, awkwardly sharing a table like uneasy allies. Neither of us was ready to admit we were becoming something else. Friends, maybe. Then, it happened. A group of students approached us, their sneers unmistakable. Emily's jaw tightened. I felt my heart race, a mix of fear and protectiveness rising within me. One of the boys sneered, "Hey, freak, what are you doing hanging out with her? Thought you were better than that." Emily didn't flinch. Instead, she stood slowly, eyes blazing. "Leave us alone," she said quietly but firmly. The boys laughed, circling us like predators. I felt trapped, but before I could react, Emily grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the back exit. We ran, the cold autumn wind whipping past us, adrenaline pounding in my veins. Outside, Emily finally stopped and turned to me, her breath coming in sharp bursts. "I'm sorry," she said, voice shaky but determined. "You shouldn't have gotten involved." I looked at her, confusion mixing with concern. What's going on, Emily? Why are they after you? She hesitated, then shook her head. I can't explain right now, but you need to trust me. That night, I couldn't shake the fear gnawing at me. Emily's secret was bigger than I had imagined. The more I tried to ignore it, the more it demanded my attention. The next day, things at school changed. Whispers followed us in the hallways. People avoided our gaze or stared with suspicion. I realized that whatever Emily was hiding wasn't just a private pain, it was a storm that threatened to pull us both under. That evening, I found a note slipped into my locker. The handwriting was messy but unmistakable. Meet me at the old bridge after school. I need to tell you everything. My heart raced as I read the words. I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when Emily's secret would finally surface. When I arrived at the bridge, the sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows across the water. Emily was already there, her silhouette tense against the fading light. She looked at me, eyes wide with fear and resolve. I've kept this hidden for so long, she began, voice trembling, but I can't anymore. You deserve to know the truth. Her story spilled out in broken fragments. A childhood marked by loss and neglect, a family torn apart by addiction, a past filled with pain she had fought to bury. She told me about running away, about the nights spent in shelters and on the streets, about the people who had hurt her and the ones who had tried to save her. I listened, stunned by the depth of her suffering and the strength it took to survive. But beneath the pain, I saw something else. Hope. A flicker of light that refused to be extinguished. In that moment, I understood why she had seemed like my enemy. It wasn't because she wanted to hurt me, but because she was protecting herself from a world that had hurt her too much. Her secret changed everything. It shattered the walls I had built around my own heart and opened a door to something I hadn't dared to believe in. Trust. We stood there, two broken souls finding a fragile connection in the darkness. And I knew, without a doubt, that my life would never be the same again. After that evening at the bridge, everything between Emily and me shifted. The invisible barrier of suspicion and fear that had kept us apart began to crumble, replaced by something fragile but real. Trust. At school, things didn't magically get easier. Whispers followed us like shadows, and not everyone accepted the change. Some students still looked at Emily with suspicion, and by extension at me. But I didn't care anymore. I knew the truth now, and that made all the difference. Emily and I started spending more time together. We shared stories, laughed at silly things, and supported each other through the daily struggles of high school. It wasn't perfect, and there were moments when her walls would rise again, shutting me out. One afternoon, we sat in the park near the school, leaves crunching under our feet. Emily opened up about her dreams she had buried beneath years of pain and fear. I want to be a teacher someday, she said quietly, to help kids who feel like I did, to make sure no one has to go through what I did alone. Her vulnerability struck me. For so long, I had seen only her armor, the cold, distant exterior, but beneath it was a heart full of hope and courage. I shared my own struggles, about my family breaking apart and feeling lost. It was the first time I had told anyone so honestly. Emily listened without judgment, offering a comfort I had never known. Our friendship grew stronger, anchored by shared pain and mutual support. We became each other's safe space in a world that often felt hostile. But life, as always, had its complications. One day, Emily disappeared from school without warning. I searched for her, asking teachers and friends, but no one knew where she was. When she finally returned, her eyes held a secret I wasn't ready to face. She was more distant, more guarded, and I could see the weight of something pressing down on her. I confronted her gently one afternoon. Emily, what's going on? You can trust me. She looked away, tears glistening. It's my mom, she whispered. She's sick. Really sick. The revelation hit me hard. Emily had been carrying not just her past, but a heavy burden in the present. Over the next weeks, I watched her juggle school, home, and the looming fear of losing her mother. She didn't ask for help, but I offered it anyway. Homework, meals, even just someone to sit with when the nights were too dark. Through it all, I saw Emily's strength in a new light. Her secret wasn't just a source of pain, it was also the reason she fought so hard to keep going. At the same time, my own family struggles pushed me to grow. I found new courage in standing up for myself and finding my own voice amid the chaos. Together, Emily and I navigated the difficult terrain of our teenage years, two unlikely friends bound by secrets, scars, and the hope for a better future. It wasn't easy, and the road was full of setbacks. But with every challenge, we learned more about ourselves and each other. And slowly, the enemy I thought she was became the person I couldn't imagine my life without. The days grew heavier as Emily's mother's health declined. The weight she carried became a shadow that darkened every moment we spent together. I saw her once vibrant spirit dim beneath the strain, and it tore at me to watch someone I cared about suffer in silence. One afternoon, I found Emily sitting alone on the school steps, her face buried in her hands. I sat beside her, unsure of what to say. After a long pause, she whispered, "I'm scared, you know? What if I lose her? What if I'm left completely alone?" Her words struck a chord deep within me. I understood fear all too well, the fear of losing those you love and being abandoned in the aftermath. Despite my desire to comfort her, I realized that no words could fix the growing chasm inside Emily. Her secret, once hidden behind walls, now threatened to consume her completely. At school, rumors about Emily's family situation spread like wildfire. Whispers turned into stares, and some classmates began to isolate her further. It was as if her pain was a stain that others wanted to avoid. One day, I confronted a group of students who had been cruel to Emily. "She's not your enemy," I told them fiercely. "None of us knows her story." But the hostility didn't end. The social isolation grew, and Emily retreated even further into herself. Her grades slipped, and the sparkle in her eyes faded. I felt powerless, watching the person I had come to love struggle under the crushing weight of her secret and the judgment of others. At home, my own family life was unraveling. My mother's silence grew colder, and my father's absence was a constant ache. The support system I thought I had was crumbling, leaving me exhausted and alone in my own way. Emily and I clung to each other in the chaos, but even our friendship faced challenges. There were moments when frustration and fear made us snap at one another. We both carried so much pain that sometimes it spilled over in anger. One evening, after a particularly tense argument, Emily stormed out of my house into the pouring rain. I wanted to follow her but felt rooted to the spot, torn between fear and helplessness. That night I lay awake, haunted by the thought that I might lose her, not just to her secret, but to the darkness that threatened to swallow us both. The weeks that followed tested every ounce of strength we had. Emily's mother's condition worsened, and the hospital visits became more frequent. I did my best to support Emily, but I was drowning too. The fear of losing Emily, the fear of losing my family, the fear of being alone, it all pressed down like a weight too heavy to bear. But even in the darkest moments, there were small sparks of hope. Emily's moments of vulnerability, when she let me in, despite everything. The times we laughed through tears, the rare, quiet moments when we just sat together, finding comfort in each other's presence. Those moments reminded me that beneath the pain and struggle, there was still a chance for healing. Yet the road ahead was uncertain. The obstacles loomed large, and the secrets that had once seemed manageable now threatened to tear us apart. The question was, could our bond survive the storm? Or would the secrets we kept and the pain we carried be too much to overcome? The turning point came quietly, without warning, in the middle of a cold November evening. Emily called me, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. "I need to show you something," she said. When I arrived at her house, the air was thick with tension. Inside, the atmosphere felt heavy, almost suffocating. Her mother lay in bed, pale and frail, but still holding on with a strength that amazed me. Emily led me to her room, where she handed me a worn, leather-bound journal. "This was my mom's," she whispered. "She wanted me to have it. It's her story, everything she never told me." I opened the journal carefully, the pages yellowed with age. Her mother's handwriting was neat but shaky, filled with stories of hardship, sacrifice, and love. Reading it, I saw a side of Emily's mother I had never imagined. The woman behind the illness, the struggles, the silence. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she said, "I never knew how much she suffered to keep us safe." That night, we stayed up reading the journal together, discovering the hidden layers of pain and resilience that shaped Emily's life. It was a revelation, not just about her mother, but about Emily herself. For the first time, Emily let me see the depth of her pain and the hope that still burned inside her. She wasn't just a girl burdened by her past. She was a fighter, shaped by love and loss. That night changed everything. Emily made a decision. She would no longer let fear and silence rule her life. She would face the challenges head-on, with the courage her mother's story inspired. At school the next day, Emily held her head high. She spoke openly in class about her mother's illness, breaking the silence that had isolated her for so long. Her bravery sparked something unexpected. Students who had once kept their distance began to reach out. Teachers offered support. The whispers turned into words of encouragement, and I stood by her side, proud and awed by the transformation. Meanwhile, my own family situation began to shift as well. Inspired by Emily's courage, I confronted my mother about the silence between us. It was painful, but it opened a door we hadn't dared to approach before. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. That healing was possible, even from the deepest wounds. Emily and I found strength in each other, ready to face whatever came next. The secret that had once threatened to destroy us had become the catalyst for change. We were no longer enemies or strangers. We were allies, survivors, friends. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, we knew we wouldn't face it alone. The emotional climax arrived quietly, but with a force I wasn't prepared for. Emily's mother took a turn for the worse, and the hospital became our new reality. The sterile smell, the beeping machines, and the hushed voices created a world far from the normal teenage life we had both desperately wanted. One evening, Emily and I sat in the waiting room, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on us. She clutched her mother's journal tightly, as if it was a lifeline. "I'm scared," she whispered, her voice cracking. "What if I lose her? What if everything falls apart?" I reached out, taking her hand in mine. "You're not alone. Whatever happens, I'm here." That night, as the hours dragged on, Emily's mother stabilized. But it was clear her battle was far from over. Through the days and nights that followed, I witnessed Emily's transformation. The girl who had once seemed so distant and guarded now stood with a fierce determination I admired deeply. She balanced hope and despair with a courage that inspired everyone around her. One afternoon, as we sat by her mother's bedside, Emily spoke softly. "This illness, it's not just taking her away, it's changing me too. I'm learning what love really means." Her words struck me. I realized that Emily's secret, the pain she had hidden, was not a weakness, but a source of strength. She had faced the worst life could throw at her and come out stronger. And through it all, she had loved fiercely, not just her mother, but those who stood by her. In that hospital room, I saw the full arc of her journey. From enemy to friend, from secret to shared truth, from pain to healing. Our bond was no longer fragile, it was unbreakable. That night as I left the hospital, I felt something I hadn't before. Hope. Hope that no secret was too heavy to carry when shared. Hope that love could transform even the deepest wounds. Hope that, despite everything, we could find light in the darkest places. Spring arrived slowly, and with it, a quiet shift in everything around us. The air was warmer, lighter. Even the sky seemed softer, less burdened by the clouds that had loomed over our lives for so long. Emily and I walked through the park near the hospital, the same place we once passed by without meaning. Now it held memories, painful ones, yes, but also healing. Emily's mother was stable, though the doctors made it clear she would need long-term care. Still, she was smiling again, cracking small jokes when we visited. The strength she had passed on to her daughter had not faded. It had simply changed shape. Emily had changed too. She stood taller now, spoke clearer, and met the world without flinching. She still had hard days, but she no longer carried them alone. And the same went for me. The coldness in my own home hadn't vanished overnight, but I had stopped waiting for love to be easy. I had learned to give it, to fight for it, and to recognize it in quiet gestures. One afternoon, Emily took me back to the place we'd first really spoken, the bench behind school. "You remember how angry I was back then?" she asked, smiling at the memory. "You were terrifying," I replied with a laugh. She looked away, then back at me with a softness I'd come to recognize. "I thought I had to push everyone away before they left me. I thought if they didn't know my truth, they couldn't hurt me. But now?" I asked. "Now I know people can surprise you. Some stay." There was a long silence between us, but it didn't feel empty. It was the kind of silence filled with meaning, with peace. Emily decided to share her mother's journal. Not online, Not with the world, but with the school counselor, who helped her find a support group. She spoke at a small school event about invisible struggles, about showing compassion. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. I was in the front row, and I don't think I'd ever been prouder of anyone in my life. That day, more students came up to her than ever before. Some shared their own stories, others simply thanked her for being brave. Something shifted in the school after that. It wasn't perfect, but it was warmer. People smiled more. The distance that had once surrounded Emily began to dissolve. As for us, our friendship only deepened. She became part of my everyday life in a way I couldn't imagine living without. We weren't just two people who met through hardship. We were two people who saved each other without even realizing it. Looking back, I often think of how I saw her at first. Cold, distant, even cruel. But what I learned through knowing her changed something fundamental in me. She wasn't my enemy. She was someone fighting a battle I couldn't see. And that battle didn't make her weaker. It made her extraordinary. Her secret didn't push us apart. It brought us together. And maybe that's the lesson I'll carry for the rest of my life. That sometimes, the people we fear the most are the ones we need the most. That hearts can change, not in grand cinematic ways, but in small moments of shared truth. Emily taught me that. And in doing so, she changed my heart. Forever.